Before you say a single word, your brain is already communicating. A look from someone across the room, a movement of your hands, a sound you make when something hurts, a face that tells another person you are afraid. You use hundreds of signals every day without noticing them. But imagine a world before words existed. A world where you could not say danger. You could not explain where food was. You could not tell your child a story. You could not ask another person for help using language. For most people today, language feels like something humans have always had. But that is not true. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans survived without the complex languages you use today. So how did ancient humans understand each other before words? The answer reveals something surprising about what made humans human. Communication existed long before language. And the first conversations were not spoken. They were created through movement, sounds, emotions, and shared experiences. Around 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens appeared in Africa. But the ability to communicate did not suddenly appear with our species. Our earlier ancestors had already been sharing information for millions of years. Around 1.8 million years ago, Homo erectus was using advanced stone tools at sites like Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. These tools were not created randomly. They required planning. A person had to understand the shape of the stone. They had to know where to strike. They had to learn from someone else. Even without words, knowledge was being transferred. A young human could watch an experienced toolmaker and understand the process. A gesture, a demonstration, a repeated action. These were some of the earliest forms of teaching. But communication was not only about making tools. It was about survival. Imagine a group of early humans moving through a dangerous landscape. A predator appears nearby. There is no word for run. No sentence explaining the threat. Only a sudden movement. A sharp sound. A change in body posture. The group reacts. Everyone understands. This type of communication exists in many animals today. But humans took it much further. Around 500,000 years ago, evidence from prehistoric sites suggests early humans were already cooperating in complex ways. At sites like Boxgrove in England, dating back around 480,000 years, archaeologists found evidence of coordinated hunting and tool use. Humans were not simply reacting to nature. They were planning together. And planning requires communication. But the biggest mystery is this: when did communication become language? Scientists still debate the exact moment. Language does not fossilize. A stone tool can survive for hundreds of thousands of years. A spoken sentence disappears in seconds. So researchers have to search for clues. They study human anatomy. They study brain evolution. They study genetics. One important clue comes from the FOXP2 gene. In 2001, researchers studying human genetics identified FOXP2 as a gene connected to speech and language ability. The gene is not a simple language gene, but changes in it may have helped humans develop more advanced communication. Neanderthals also had a version of FOXP2 similar to modern humans. A discovery from 2010 showed that Neanderthals carried genetic variants associated with speech ability. This suggests our closest human relatives may have had more complex communication than many people imagine. But language is more than making sounds. It is the ability to share invisible ideas. And that required another major change. The human mind had to learn how to create symbols. Because before humans could describe the world with words, they first had to represent the world inside their minds. And the evidence for this is much older than expected. But it gets stranger when we look at what early humans were trying to communicate. The first step toward language may not have been words. It may have been imagination. Before humans could describe things they could not see, they needed the ability to create mental symbols. A handprint on a cave wall was not just a handprint. A carved shape was not just a mark. It was an idea. Around 100,000 years ago, humans began leaving behind stronger evidence of symbolic thinking. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists discovered engraved ochre pieces dating back around 75,000 years. The pieces contained carefully made patterns. They were not random scratches. Someone had intentionally created a design. The person who made them was not only using their hands, they were expressing a thought. But symbols require something important: shared understanding. A symbol only works if other people understand what it means. A single person can make a mark. A group must agree on its meaning, and that agreement is the foundation of language. Around 40,000 years ago, humans began producing more evidence of symbolic communication. At the Chauvet Cave in France, discovered in 1994, researchers found paintings dating back approximately 36,000 years. The walls showed lions, bears, horses, and other animals. These paintings were not simple decorations. They showed observation, memory, and the ability to communicate ideas beyond the immediate moment. A person could look at a drawing of an animal and understand something that was not physically present. The animal was gone. The hunt was finished. But the idea remained. This was a completely new ability in human history. Humans could now communicate about the past. They could communicate about the future. They could share things that existed only in the mind. But spoken language likely began even earlier. Scientists believe complex language may have developed gradually over hundreds of thousands of years. There was probably no single day when humans suddenly started speaking. Instead, communication slowly became more detailed. A warning sound became a specific signal. A gesture became a shared meaning. A simple call became a word. And words became a system. One clue comes from the human brain. Modern humans have specialized regions involved in language processing. Important areas are Broca's area and Wernicke's area. These brain regions help humans produce and understand speech. Fossil evidence suggests that early humans had brain structures capable of supporting complex communication. At the Khabara cave site in Israel, researchers discovered a Neanderthal skeleton dating back around 60,000 years. The fossil included a well-preserved hyoid bone, a small bone in the throat involved in speech. Its shape was similar to modern humans. This suggests Neanderthals may have been physically capable of producing human-like sounds. But speaking is not only about having the right body parts. It requires cooperation. A language works because a group agrees that certain sounds have certain meanings. This means language may have evolved because humans were becoming increasingly social. Survival depended on sharing information. Where to find food, where danger was hiding, who needed help, which places were safe. A single human could survive, but a connected group could survive better. Around 300,000 years ago, evidence from early Homo sapiens sites suggests humans were already living in complex social groups. At Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, fossils dated to around 315,000 years ago show early members of our species. These humans were not living like isolated individuals. They were part of communities where cooperation mattered. And cooperation requires communication. But there was another problem. Even if early humans could communicate, they still needed a reason to share information beyond survival. They needed stories. They needed memories. They needed a way to pass knowledge across generations. And this is where language began changing humans forever. Because words did not just help humans describe the world. They allowed humans to build worlds inside their minds. But the evidence suggests the first conversations may have been about something much simpler. Something every human still does today. The first conversations were probably not about philosophy. They were not about distant places. They were not about complicated ideas. They were about survival. A warning. A location. A person. A need. A feeling. Early humans needed to tell others where food could be found. They needed to warn their group about predators. They needed to teach children how to make tools and recognize danger. Every shared piece of information increased the chances of survival. Around 70,000 years ago, something important began happening in human history. Archaeologists call this period part of the Middle to Later Stone Age transition. Across Africa, researchers found evidence of increasingly complex tools, ornaments, and symbolic behavior. At sites like Blombos Cave and Pinnacle Point in South Africa, humans were creating objects that suggest advanced planning and communication. They were not only reacting to the environment, they were sharing ideas about it. This ability gave humans an unusual advantage. A wolf pack can follow instinct. A human group can create knowledge. One person discovers a useful plant. Another person learns it. A child grows up already knowing it. Information can travel across generations. Language became a form of survival technology. Not something held in the hands, something carried inside the mind. But communication was not only useful for survival, it also changed human relationships. Before language, emotions had to be shown through actions. A person could show trust by sharing food. They could show friendship by staying close. They could show fear through body language. But language allowed humans to explain invisible things. Intentions, memories, promises, plans. This changed the way groups worked. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed in 1992 that human social groups were strongly connected to our ability to communicate. His research suggested that language may have helped humans maintain larger social networks than other primates. A chimpanzee group might rely heavily on physical contact. Humans could use conversation to maintain relationships across distance. A person could remember someone who was not present. They could talk about someone who had died. They could describe something that happened many years earlier. The human mind was no longer limited to the immediate moment. But there is still one final mystery. If language was so powerful, why did humans spend so much of their history without writing? Because spoken language came first. Writing appeared much later. The earliest known writing systems developed around 5,000 years ago in places like Mesopotamia. But humans had already been sharing stories, teaching skills, and preserving knowledge for hundreds of thousands of years before that. Every hunter who taught another person how to track an animal. Every parent who showed a child how to survive. Every group that passed down memories of dangerous places. They were using the foundation of human culture. Language did not create human intelligence. It multiplied it. It allowed one human mind to connect with another. And eventually, millions of minds could connect across generations. Today, every word you use carries traces of that ancient struggle. The words you speak, the stories you remember,